Tonight, a new term, a new team and a new plan to tackle migration. As the Prime Minister says, we're entering phase 2 of his government. Keir Starmer takes an axe to the No. 10 operation and appoints Rachel Reeves as deputy as his new chief advisor. He says the focus is now on delivery, as the Home Secretary says the government might reinterpret how the ECHR works to tackle asylum. I'll speak to the Education Minister and former Home Secretary, Jackie Smith. But as migration continues to fuel growing anger in many communities and threats of legal challenge by councils, we'll have a special report from Nuneaton. Also tonight, the Foreign Secretary calls the situation in Gaza a man-made famine as the government steps up its rhetoric against the Israeli operation in the Strip. And as the Prime Minister reveals that he has a St George's cross in his Downing Street flat, we'll be asking, is flying the flag still a divisive issue on the left? All that and more with Nadine Zahawi and John McDonnell, who'll be with us for the next hour. It's Monday, I'm Sophy Ridge live from Westminster, and this is the Politics Hub. Happy 1st of September. Back to school, back to work. If you're anything like me, it's the annual mad morning day when everything you thought was ready isn't ready at all and you should have left 20 minutes ago. But look, those are definitely not the back to work vibes that Keir Starmer is trying to project. He's reshuffled his back team to try and focus on delivery and messaging. And he's also sent out his Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, to give a statement to the House of Commons about perhaps the bubbling issue of the summer: illegal immigration and small boats. Now, she's temporarily suspended family reunion applications for new refugees and also said that in the future there shouldn't be any asylum hotels. But I just want to talk about her comments on the ECHR. Now, this, of course, is the Human Rights Treaty that includes Article 8, the right to a family life, that's been used by some migrants to argue they should be able to stay in the UK. Now, Nigel Farage and Reform say they want to axe it. They want to get rid of it. But Labour say they want to keep it. This is Keir Starmer.
Does going further mean disentangling ourselves from the ECHR and disapplying human rights laws in immigration cases?
No, I don't think that is necessary. I also remind myself that the international agreements we've signed have given us the basis for the deals that we've struck on illegal migration.
So that's Keir Starmer, that's pretty clear. But then just listen to Yvette Cooper. This was today.
We have the challenge around Article 8 and family cases, that far too many cases are being treated as exceptions to the rules rather than according to the rules that Parliament has set. We think the rules need to change in order to be able to address that, and we need to work through different changes to the way in which Article 8 in particular is interpreted as part of our immigration and asylum system.
So effectively, they need to look at Article 8, they need to look at reform. Now I'm not a political strategist, but I don't think it's entirely without risk to say, yeah, look, this thing is a bit of a mess. It's not really working how we want it to, but we want to keep it anyway. You wouldn't convince someone to go to a restaurant with you by saying, yeah, the food's not great, but I'm hoping things might get better in the future. And there is also a risk for Labour that they're making Nigel Farage's argument for him. Just as perhaps no one should have been surprised that when you tell people the European Union is flawed and imperfect, but you should stay in it anyway, they weren't entirely convinced. Now, our Deputy Political Editor, Sam Coates, has this report on the return of politics to Westminster.
The faces of his closest aides on the day after the election, or at least that was then. In the 5 years since he's become leader, Keir Starmer's had 4 chiefs of staff, 2 cabinet secretaries and 5 directors of communication. And today, again, he changed that team around him. On the left is Darren Jones, the Treasury No. 2 who oversaw government spending. He's being sent next door to help the Prime Minister. Old faces back too. Tim Allen helped Labour prep for power in 1997. And after a spell in lobbying is now in charge of the political message, back for phase 2 of this government.
The urgency and the frustration I completely understand. I want to go further and faster. And that's amongst the reasons I've done some changes here at No. 10 today to make No. 10 more powerful to drive through the changes that we need.
To deliver pointed promises like this.
When it comes to the asylum hotels, I want them emptied. I've been really clear about that.
Most moves seem designed to boost Number 10's economic firepower as they wrestle with a massive budget black hole. But one appointment matters most.
The Prime Minister has brought in a Mr. Fix-It to sort out his problems. Mid-ranking Cabinet Minister Darren Jones has been parachuted into Downing Street with a brief to stick his nose in other Cabinet Ministers' affairs and report back to the Prime Minister about what works and what doesn't. Maybe there's a reason that job and job title, Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister, has never existed in the past.
Delivery is hard. The Home Secretary cleared closing hotels forever won't happen at once.
We need to close all asylum hotels, and we need to do so for good. But that must be done in a controlled and orderly manner, and not through a return to the previous government's chaos that led to the opening of hotels in the first place.
The Tories say this is a damp squib.
What I would actually like to see the Home Secretary talk about is how she's going to close down the asylum hotels. What they have done with their recent court case is actually show that they believe that illegal migrants have more rights than our local communities, and we completely disagree with that.
This morning we've got all the Number 10 staff together.
Fresh start, new team, but will it solve old problems? Sam Coates, Sky News, Westminster.
Well, Sam's here with us now. Sam, I'm going to put your question at the end of your VT there directly to you. Will it solve the problems?
No. The problems are huge. By the end of this year, Keir Starmer needs to have filled a budget black hole of somewhere between 20 and 40 billion pounds. That's because at the moment he's on course to overshoot with his spending, and Rachel Reeves has got very tight self-imposed limit. We do not know how they are going to do that. You have some of the challenges set out there that you were talking about asylum and migration. We're at the foothills of very tricky reform plans on things like special educational needs. It sounds to me as if some bits of government want to come back and do more welfare changes. Changing the personnel around the Prime Minister doesn't do that. And I think quite a lot of what he's done will end up being quite contentious. Darren Jones is he's a sort of reasonably prominent politician in Westminster. He loves a fight. And now he's in a delicate role, sitting around the cabinet table, sort of whispering in the Prime Minister's ear, this cabinet minister has got their sums right, but don't listen to them too much when they ask for more money on that. That is inevitably going to lead him into conflict with quite a lot of the other people around them. That is why we haven't had a job like this in the past. You've never had a chief secretary to the Prime Minister. It's a constitutional innovation. There is a cabinet minister that seems to matter more than anybody else.
So he's going to become the most unpopular man in Westminster, that's what you're saying?
The only question is whether it's become, because I don't think the spending review, which he oversaw, left him in a particularly popular position as it was. And there's been a mini reshuffle underneath it. We were told there was going to be no reshuffle today. I mean, it's a bit boring, but we do like it when they tell us the truth in the lead up to these things. So I think that the challenges remain. And so many people I talk to ask the question of whether or not the direction, and we're looking all over the place, maybe to Darren Jones, isn't the thing that actually ought to come from the guy at the top, Keir Starmer. Where is he taking us? What does he want to make his priority? The economy, migration, what happens when it clashes? How big a deal are things like reform of special educational needs? Unless there's a clearer lodestar visible at the top of government, and lots of people question whether there is, then no, I don't think that all the problems are going to be solved.
OK, Sam, thank you very much. Sam Coates there. I think Sam's going to stay with us. I'll bring in our duo for the evening as well. The former Chancellor and Senior Conservative Minister, Nadine Zahawi, and the former Shadow Chancellor, that's John McDonnell. Great to have you both with us. So we had this sort of Sam Coates assessment. Is there an argument that actually does matter? Reshuffling, getting the right people into the right jobs in the back team? Maybe this is going to be the second phase of government, delivery, messaging. What do you think, John?
It has to come from the Prime Minister. You can reshuffle all you like and you can try and put some shields between you and the individual ministers around the cabinet table, but you have to do it yourself. You're the person who has to make the decision. You're the person who has to give the direction. You're the person who has to explain where we're going. So I don't think this will make any difference whatsoever. And I think Sam's right. It might cause more problems, might cause more disputes. I'd rather Keir just came out with it himself. And if he has to bang the table a few times, well, fair enough. That has to be done. That's what you do when you're Prime Minister, to direct the government. So I think today has been almost irrelevant to what the big issues that we have to face. And for me, It's one, stop making ludicrous decisions like the winter fuel allowance, the disability cuts. That's the first thing. Have a bit of political nous. Secondly, on the immigration issue, on the issue of asylum seekers, there's a route through that with regard to safe passages, that sort of thing. But then third, this budget's got to be huge. It's got to be really big, transformative. And I'd rather he concentrated on that than rearranging individual ministerial positions.
That's interesting, the budget. Both of you, of course, a bit of experience in looking at these things. Nadine, what do you make about the reshuffle first?
I think that Keir is behaving like it's business as usual and is not really understanding where the nation is at. The 30-year bond today is at 5.64%, highest ever been since 1989. To Sam's point, we're heading towards a financial crisis. Taxing the nation even higher, John, won't solve the problem. I think 60,000 illegals entering the country in his first year is a national emergency. Now, it has to come from, well, I do agree with John, it has to come from the Prime Minister. What he's not reading at the moment, and I think this is where Nigel has made all the running over the summer, and you're going to see it this weekend again, is the nation understands the national emergency, as we did under the pandemic. But the Prime Minister's team, and giving Darren this slightly confused title, he's got to report into my old job at the Cabinet Office, CDL, and to the Prime Minister. You're behaving as if everything is normal. Nothing is normal at the moment, right? Things are really difficult, financially and with our borders. If he's serious about wanting to rescue his premiership, you declare a national emergency, right? We brought the army and embedded them into the NHS when we had to vaccinate the nation, right? You create camps, you try and find a different deal to Rwanda if he doesn't want to do Rwanda because it's a conservative deal. When Maloney did a deal with Eddie Rama to process people in Albania, the illegal immigration to Italy came down, and she benefited from that. You have to have a deterrent. And I think at the moment, getting rid of Sue Gray, who understood how the machine worked and could knock heads together, was a mistake.
It's interesting.
And I just think he doesn't understand where the nation is at. And that is truly, for me, a red flag. I think he's heading towards a train crash.
We'll talk a bit more about the migration arguments later on in the programme, but I think it's quite interesting both of you talking about the economy there, right? And I'm sure you come at it from very different perspectives, but both saying that, look, this is the kind of flashing red light. I mean, is that part of what this is about as well, bringing Darren Jones in, like the Treasury man?
Yeah, there's a clear bolstering of economic credibility of Number 10. Now, there's been a long period, a bafflingly long period, where Keir Starmer really hasn't had very much personal economic advice. He's subcontracted it all to Rachel Reeves, but Rachel Reeves has, in the view of quite a lot of Labour MPs, left them in a pretty perilous situation with tight borrowing rules that she's going to overshoot, once more, it appears, but by a very long way this year, forcing her into cuts that I think almost everybody would find painful, and tax rises likely to come. It's not just Darren Jones. You've got a new guy running the kind of civil service operation, Dan York-Smith. He's from the Treasury. He oversaw the budget. There's a new economic advisor as well. So suddenly it looks like blame for economic problems could be spread quite widely, probably after the causes were pretty well established. So now there is sort of all hands on deck to deal with the economic problem. But we're almost at the point where it's almost impossible to fix it without a really blunt instrument, without incredibly painful tax rises. You're going to see speculation that doesn't get shot down about property taxes, wealth taxes, national insurance here, there and everywhere. Not national insurance, actually, but various things to do with capital gains tax on homes. We just don't know. It's a whole of near unprecedented size. So, yeah, it's going to be difficult, and you're going to need lots of big brains to try and work your way through it, but there just aren't easy answers.
Thanks both. Thank you, Sam. Thanks both very much. We'll have lots more from you throughout the programme as well. And of course, the Prime Minister's reshuffle and the government's migration plans as well are sure to feature in tomorrow's papers. We'll have our extended press preview from 10:30 this evening with tonight's news and tomorrow's headlines. Joining us will be the political commentator Adam Bolton, might have heard of him, and the comment editor at Telegraph, Annabel Denham. Well, I've also been speaking to the Education Minister today, Baroness Jackie Smith, about all of the things we've been speaking about and more. Thanks for being on the programme. Good to have you here as always. So we've had a reshuffle, not a cabinet one, but one of the backroom team. What's the idea?
Well, I think what the Prime Minister is very clear about is that we've had to spend you know, quite a lot of the last year fixing the foundations of what we inherited. And now we are very clearly moving into delivering on the things that people are telling us are really important, making sure there's more money in people's pockets, getting the NHS really motoring again, securing our borders, and that needs a slightly different approach. So that's what we're going to be focusing on now.
I guess, you know, my point slightly here is, you know, Keir Starmer's on his 5th Director of Communications. He's had 2 Chief of Staffs and he's only been in power for, you know, just over a year. You know, at what point do you think it is not the staff that's the problem here?
Well, I don't think it's unreasonable for Prime Ministers to move people around when they're at different...
You know, you've been in Westminster long enough to know that this is a churn, isn't it?
There have been, you know, people have moved around, but I mean, in the end, what Keir Starmer's going to be judged on, what we're all going to be judged on, is not, you know, who's got a new job today, but whether or not we are doing that shift into demonstrating to the country the difference that we're making in the areas that they're really, really concerned about. And, you know, this is interesting today for those of us who operate within Westminster, who's in, who's out. But actually what the proof of it will be is the extent to which the government is and can continue to deliver.
Yeah, well, continue to deliver or begin to deliver in some of these crucial roles, I guess. The thing that you've focused on today through the statement with the Home Secretary is immigration, illegal immigration specifically, in small boats. I mean, that's been a problem, hasn't it? Continued problem.
One of the reasons why Yvette Cooper was in the House today talking about it is, of course, we understand that this is something that people are concerned about, but what she was also able to report on was considerable progress and action over the summer, whether or not the signing of the agreement with France. And of course, we've already detained people who've come here from France. We will be returning them in the next few weeks. We're setting up the process through which there'll be the reciprocal arrangement. She was also able to talk about the way in which the French are changing the law in order to enable their police to intervene in shallow waters to stop people getting into the boats at all. But she also talked about some of the changes that we'll make to prevent some of the pull factors that have allowed this criminal activity to get the grip that I'm afraid it was able to get over recent years. For example, a temporary suspension of the ability to immediately bring family through a refugee.
You're talking about the pull factors, and I think this is quite, you know, important here because, and I know you'll talk about the August figures that have been, you know, an improvement, but the first half of this year, we've had record numbers of small boat crossings. So, you know, it does feel like, you know, the pull factor for some people was the idea of this Labour government.
Well,
that you'll be softer, that, you know, you're getting rid of Rwanda, that you know, that you'll be soft touch.
Well, I mean, let's not forget Rwanda cost us £700 million and 4 volunteers were returned to Rwanda. So there's no way that could have been seen as a deterrent. It never was going to work. And that is symbolic of the type of, you know, let's just make an announcement and believe that that's going to have an impact. Actually, what you need is the sort of consistent hard work that the government has been doing, reinstating resource into the asylum decision-making process so that decisions are made more quickly.
We've had a very bad year for small boat arrivals so far, right? So
yes, and that is exactly why you need to put in the work to ensure that you've got the system in place to where we'll really be able to see those figures turning around. And it is about making decisions more quickly, which is why, you know, the really shameful position that we inherited where the last government had actually frozen asylum decision-making resources, that's been turned around. It's why we're now returning more people. It's why, as Yvette was talking about today, we'll be able to use digital ID through our enforcement teams to make it more difficult to work here without the right to be here. There's a whole range of things. You know, I'm afraid this isn't something that is easily solved, especially when it's got the sorts of routes it was allowed to get by the last government.
Yvette Cooper was also talking about the ECHR. She's quite critical of it, saying, you know, it wasn't really working in the way that it should be. Do you agree with that?
Well, I certainly think, as Yvette had previously said, there are cases that are being determined on Article 8 terms, which I don't think are being decided.
The right to family life, this is.
The right to family life. I think they are not getting the balance right. That's one of the things that Yvette is looking at in terms of ECHR. Also, I think there are other countries across Europe who are concerned about the way that ECHR is working. That's why Shabana Mahmood, the Justice Secretary, is talking with colleagues across Europe about how we can make sure that it does what it was designed to do, which is to defend our human rights, to enable us to make international agreements that will help to support them, but not to limit our ability to do what is clearly common sense and which our Parliament thinks should be happening.
'Cause I guess this is what I'm slightly grappling with today, because your position is still to stay in the ECHR, right? Nigel Farage says we should get out of it, we should ignore it, that's the best way to solve illegal migration. And I'm not a political strategist, but isn't there a risk in saying this thing isn't really working, we want to change it, but actually we will want to keep going with it, want to keep it anyway? It's a bit like Brexit, right? Saying, the European Union is flawed, it's imperfect, but we're going to keep going. And then what a surprise.
Quite a lot of people think it would have been better for us to reform the EU and stay within it. But anyway, the point...
the argument
it's an interesting
that's my point. If you're saying it needs reform, then people think, well, let's just get out of it.
That is a fair point, but of course... What also happens when you abide by international law is that you're able to make the sort of agreements that help you to solve the problem. So whether or not it's the agreement with the French or whether or not it's the agreement we've now made with the Germans that means that their police are much more able to tackle at source the gangs who are going to be delivering the boats and doing the smuggling. So I think there is a legitimate argument that throwing out all of our international arrangements here would actually not benefit us in making the agreements that we need to make, but we can and will make it work more effectively so that it reflects the will of Parliament and the will of the British people.
Now, you talked for a lot of time on things that aren't on your brief, and I really do want to talk to you about childcare because you've got a significant announcement today. What is it?
Well, we're really pleased that today we've actually been able to deliver the entitlement for working parents with children from 9 months upwards of 30 hours childcare a week. This is a saving to families of £7,500. It's the ability for children to get the sort of support that they need to ensure that they are going to arrive at school able to really make the most of their schooling. It'll free up a few grandparents from having to do the sort of, I'm getting to that age where I have to worry about these things, Sophie, from having to step in and look after children. And this time last year, everybody was worried about whether or not we would be able to deliver this. The department, Bridget Phillipson, the sector have worked enormously hard to make sure that we're now able to deliver this for over 500,000 children, more than we estimated we were going to be able to do. And that's why over 9 out of 10 families have got one of the first 3 choices of provision that they wanted.
Now, look, you and I both know that this is a chronically undervalued and underfunded sector, early years, and that actually if you want to make a difference to a child's life, you've got to start early. It's nurseries, not universities, that are the engines of social mobility, right? So I just want to look at some of the details here, because you say, I think, that you need an extra 35,000 early years staff. Is that correct?
That was an estimate for later on in the Parliament. We have already delivered an additional 18,200.
Because I guess my question here is, how easy is it to recruit these staff, who are actually, particularly well-qualified staff? We've got a report out today from the National Foundation for Educational Research saying often the barrier to more places in nurseries is staff, and particularly the kind of staff that you want to be looking after your children.
Well, this is precisely why we were worried this time last year, given that this was a pledge that was originally made by the Tory government with no plan to deliver it. We were worried that we were actually going to be able to get to this point this year. I'm very pleased that we've been able to do it.
But you need
and that's
more,
because
right? Wow.
We've invested in additional staff. Yes, we will need more staff, but we've got 18,000 more staff. We've got over 5,000 more providers being able to provide this capacity, which is why we've been able to deliver for parents in the way in which I've said. But this is the start. There is more that we need to do, both in terms of the quantity and the quality of what's being provided to children, as you say, at those absolutely crucial years, which are going to make all of the difference to whether or not they can then make a success of their schooling. By the way, as I'm the universities minister as well, I think they can drive social mobility as well. But you're absolutely,
nurseries more.
Nurseries more, I think right,
it's fair.
That we need to make sure children have got the best start in life, and there's a really important stage where we've demonstrated delivery today.
Is it going to free you up as a grandparent then? Or are you going to do a few unpaid hours?
I am not
Your children might not be too happy watching this.
I am not yet a grandparent, but I think my children already know that I'm unlikely to be one of those who's going to sort of step in and do the childcare. But now, thanks to this Labour government, more grandparents will be able to do the fun things with their grandchildren, not have to look after them so that others can go out to work.
Great to have you on the programme. Thank you very much. Yeah, apologies to Jackie Smith's children if you are watching. It doesn't sound like she's going to be doing much in the way of unpaid childcare for you. The fun bits, of course, importantly, just as important. You're watching The Politics Hub coming up. Following a summer of protests across the country over hotels housing asylum seekers, Sky News visits one town where there are deep divides over migration. That special report up next.
People that pod together, they have a little hive brain going on.
They've not had a good week.
I've had a good week. There's a teaser there, a teaser.
Ooh, OK, nothing to see here. Drama over.
Full stop.
Anyway, we'll get to that. She will be mortified.
Because she's the first female chancellor.
I popped upstairs, made myself a cheese sandwich, and now I'm with you.
Annalise has come dressed in the magenta of electoral dysfunction. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
Fire, shouts the commander. There's a dash to safety.
We've now got to wait inside the shelter to see if there is incoming.
I'm Deborah Hames, Sky's security and defence editor. Should Russia's war with Ukraine escalate significantly, pilots like these could be called upon to go into combat for real.
Hello, welcome back. Now, as we've been discussing, the government has today set out the next steps in its plans to shake up the asylum system. It's been the simmering political issue of the summer, with protests outside hotels and legal battles with local councils. And one place that's become a flashpoint for tension is the town of Nuneaton. Our Midlands correspondent Shimon Freeman-Powell spent some time there. She sent this special report.
Here in Nuneaton, tensions around immigration are running high.
That's the issue we have in our country.
Anti-immigration protesters have taken to the streets several times and even clashed with police. The protest started after 2 men were accused of raping a 12-year-old girl. The men deny the charges and are due to face trial. The leader of the reform-led council, George Finch, claimed that they were asylum seekers, although their immigration status hasn't been confirmed.
I don't think I'd want to live next door to, not being funny, not being racist at all, an asylum seeker, knowing what's been going on the news.
20-year-olds getting married or partners, they're struggling to get on the property ladder. And these asylum seekers, you know, 5-star hotels, like you said, these HMO places, you know, I think it's unfair.
I've seen the amount of immigration into the local area recently. As long as there's no trouble, I don't think that there's an issue, really.
Do you think race plays a part in any of this at all?
I'm not sure. Maybe, because obviously quite a lot of people are racist and can be racist.
No, I don't think it's got anything to do with race. I mean, we've got Chinese people here, we've got Indians, we've got Africans.
Were you born in England?
I was born in England, yeah.
Yeah, so you're English, and England is for the English.
But my grandparents came from Jamaica.
Well, I've got nothing against Jamaica.
But they were
West
immigrants.
Indies, I've probably got one of the best cricket teams I've ever seen.
It was during this interview with Zaheen, a local businessman, that things took a turn. And how old are you?
32.
32.
Yeah.
How?
Yeah, no, we should...
That's the issue we have with using in our country. You got to use raping our kids. This is our country. How about becoming your country if you had your kids?
Let's walk. To avoid an escalation of the confrontation, I attempted to move Zaheen away. Are you okay?
Yeah, because I'm used to this conflict.
No, but that's
mine.
No one should be used to that. A woman who worked at the local bookshop had heard the commotion and came to speak to us. Have you ever seen anything like that?
No. Well, there have been protests. And of course, Warwickshire County Council's gone to reform. So I think it's given certain people a licence to be aggressive and to be racist.
Wow, to hear that actually is saddening. And I think what I've just heard is not the case at all. Reform, actually, and Nigel Farage as the leader, has done the most out of any political party, out of any person, to take down the far right, to protect young girls. They think that you going out protesting, that's racist. And that's the world going mad.
As more anti-immigration protests pop up across Britain, councils like Epping have taken legal steps to block asylum seekers being housed in hotels. But if asylum seekers aren't housed in hotels, they may be housed next door, like here in Nuneaton. We've just been invited into a house where asylum seekers live. This used to be a 3-bed house on a terrace road. It's now a house that sleeps 8 people. I spoke to one of the residents here, Javed. We're not using his real name as he asked to stay anonymous. He's from Iran and could only speak Farsi. We used a translation app to speak to him and then had a translator review what he told us. Did you come here on a small boat? And if so, what was that journey like?
I didn't know how to swim, and I was very scared, but they forced me to get on the boat. I had to come here illegally. I had to. I had no other choice.
So why are asylum seekers here in Nuneaton living in residential properties? And how did we get to this point? A few years ago, asylum seekers in Nuneaton were few and far between, in single digits. But by June of this year, that number had surged to 247, none of them in hotels. They're living in dispersal accommodation, in the community, side by side with locals. That works out to 19 asylum seekers per 10,000 people, placing Nuneaton 87th in terms of concentration. It's data that paints a picture of pressure, of change, of a town adjusting to a new reality.
If they want to protest, by all means protest, but there has to be a solution, and I think that solution comes through dialogue, not ranting off, swearing at each other.
In a statement, a spokesperson for the Home Office told Sky News, "This government inherited an asylum system in chaos. We have taken urgent action to fix the system, more than doubling asylum decisions and cutting the backlog by 41%. And the cost of asylum hotels was reduced by almost £1 billion in 2024 to 25. After the incident in the town centre, Zaheen decided not to press charges.
We have to feel accepted in it, included, be part of it.
Shimam's report there on Nuneaton. I'm really interested to get your thoughts on this, Nadeem and John. Look, it's an issue that has been present for a long time now, perhaps forever, right? But also you are seeing these pockets where things are becoming pretty intense, and I think we saw that over the summer. John, what's your sort of reaction in watching Shimam's report?
I think this. We've got to stop dancing to Nigel Farage's tune. And I also think using language like this is a national emergency. As politicians, we've got to show some leadership. The number of people coming across the Channel up until August was 29,000. Immigration into this country was 948,000. So we're talking about 3% of people. 75% of those that come will get status because they're genuine refugees. There'll be less than 1%, therefore, that we'll classify as not genuine refugees. We've got to get that information across to people and put that in context. And as a result of that, I think we need a rational dialogue and not to, as I say, play Farage's game. There are solutions to this, and we've dealt with these issues before. We dealt with it with Ukraine. We set up a system where there'd be a safe route, and people were welcomed here. If we can set up a safe route system, speedily process the cases, and then do returns as necessary and establish more agreements across Europe on that, I think we can solve. We've got to demonstrate to people we can solve these issues, not stir the pot. In my constituency at the weekend, there was meant to be a peaceful demonstration. That's fair enough. People can demonstrate. That's perfectly proper. I wouldn't have supported the demonstration, but it's their right to. And then what happened? We had a group turn up, masked, tried to break into a hotel, and they assaulted police officers. So we've got police officers who've been injured as a result of that. So I think all politicians need to be very careful about the language they use, but also recognise actually there is an element out there that's dangerous. And we've got to make sure that we form a united front, never to allow that sort of behaviour within our country. We should welcome people here, as we always have done as a country, recognise the issues that might have to be addressed as a result of that, and that includes housing, and deal with those issues. They're all solvable, but we mustn't play Farage's tune, because I don't think he's doing it in the best interest of the country. I think he's doing the best interest of his own political career.
Nadeem.
Look, I think if you don't want the issue to be hijacked by racists and extremists on both sides, you've got, what you just saw, which is abhorrent, racism, but also the other side is obviously, Pakistani gangs grooming young, vulnerable white girls, not in just one town, all over the country. If you don't want to end up in a place where you have civil unrest, you've got to get serious about dealing with the issue. Now, John talks about legitimate asylum seekers. Absolutely right. We've got to make sure there are safe routes. But the illegals coming across in these boats, almost 60,000 since Keir Starmer took office, are coming from a safe country called France. The DNA of the British people, I saw this, it was a privilege to see it through the pandemic, how we dealt with... Let me just it's a really important point, right? When we dealt with the pandemic or when we organised Her Late Majesty's funeral, we come together when we have a challenge ahead of us and we deal with it. We write letters and we do petitions. We don't do what happens in France, which is burn tyres, down the Champs-Élysées. But, and here's the big but, when people feel that it is unfair for an illegal to be backed by this government ahead of the legitimate taxpayers of this country, they will rise. My fear, the reason I say to you this is a national emergency, is what you're seeing is our cities are changing so rapidly. Crime is on the rise, rape is on the rise, grooming is on the rise, and then the donut around it of the people, the legitimate indigenous people of this country. And I, by the way, look at my colour. My parents were immigrants to this country. I was born in Baghdad. but I came to this country and adopted its values. I'm proud of British values, right? The difference, what people are seeing, is two things. One, unfairness, and people who are just not proud to be in Britain. And that is a recipe for unrest. Unless the Prime Minister gets this, right? It's not about attacking Nigel Farage. It's not. Nigel Farage has understood what is happening in the country. That is why
this is
such a dangerous and potent.
You are using the same language, and you have a responsibility as a senior politician to tell the truth. These issues about crime on the rise and all the rest of it, the statistics do not bear that out, it's including with rape as well. And you're using all those old, I'm afraid, racist shibboleths that's thrown in every time.
Bit difficult, John, with a name like Nadeem Zahawi.
I know, but
but all I'm saying to you...
Let me finish my sentence, please. Let me finish.
Go for it.
Because what you've done is a diatribe of untruths, I'm afraid. And that adds, I'm afraid, to I think the instability and the dangerous moment that we're in. And you know as well as I...
Are the majority of illegals coming on the boats young men or not?
What does that make any difference? They're
illegal.
Please,
they are illegal.
I would like to finish a sentence.
Go ahead.
Because you have to respect other people's views. There's no such thing as illegal. The reason they're in the boats, everyone has the right to claim asylum. That's the first thing. The second thing is, the reason they're coming in on the boats is because actually there's no safe routes established.
Where are they coming from? Where are they coming from?
They're coming from Syria.
No. Which country are they coming from?
Wait, let's let him finish.
Did the Ukrainians come via France? And did you want to turn them back?
The Ukrainians didn't come illegally.
They came, exactly, you're making my point. They came through a safe route established by the government. These people are being forced onto the boats because there's no safe route established.
They're in France, John. They're in France.
The Ukrainians came across Europe as well. Why didn't you say to the Ukrainians, stay in France? You didn't. What we did, as we same with Hong Kong, we said we would accept them because they deserve to be here, because we accept refugees. These are exactly the same people. They come from Syria, Eritrea, and from Afghanistan, and they're coming from places where they're unsafe. We have a responsibility. We have less than 1% of refugees come to this country overall. We're 17th amongst other European countries. We're one of the lowest ones.
I think your argument demonstrates the nature that you just don't get it. And I think we're heading towards civil unrest.
What you're doing is you're doing Farage's job for it.
I'm absolutely
You're allowing that demagogic sort of expressions to destabilise
I am seeing the dangers ahead. I want my country to be cohesive. I don't want it to be hijacked by extremists on either side of the argument.
It's perfectly all right for your family to come here, but not those people whose lives are at risk in Afghanistan.
They're coming from France. It's a safe country.
But others have had to come through different routes as well. If we established a safe route, we'd be able to assess them quickly, and if they weren't allowed to be here because they didn't qualify, they'd be returned.
I'm going to come in. I can see that both of you feel very, very strongly about this, and thank you for expressing yourself. I hope you both feel that you got a chance to put your views across. So I appreciate it. Well, to the situation in Gaza now, which tonight the Foreign Secretary has described as a man-made famine. David Lammy said a massive humanitarian response was needed to prevent more deaths. Here he is speaking in the Commons a short time ago.
Since the 1st of July, over 300 people have died from malnutrition, including 119 children. More than 132,000 children under the age of 5 are at risk of dying from hunger by June of next year. Madam Deputy Speaker, this is not a natural disaster, it's a man-made famine in the 21st century. And I'm outraged by the Israeli government's refusal to allow in sufficient aid. We need a massive humanitarian response to prevent more deaths. Crucial NGOs, humanitarians and health workers allowed to operate, and stockpiles of aid on Gaza's borders released. As a result, in the past 3 months, over 2,000 Gazans have been killed trying to feed their families. And Hamas themselves are exploiting the chaos and deliberately starving Israeli hostages for abhorrent political purposes.
Well, the Israeli Defence Forces spokesperson has invited Sky News to accompany them into Gaza. It comes after earlier in August, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said he plans on letting more foreign journalists into the Strip to verify Israel's activities in the territory.
So which organisations in the last 3 weeks have you taken in? Which media organisations, specifically, name names, have you taken in?
I think I tend to keep my professional relationships with the outlets I work with them. I can provide them afterwards, but I think I tend to... There's no secrecy. There's respect when you are a spokesperson working with journalists, and you work with them and you communicate with them. I don't need to name the names. There's been dozens of reporters coming in with us to Gaza in recent weeks.
And we can come in with you
anyone
next
who
week.
wants to come can come with us into Gaza.
Sky News can come into Gaza, and you're saying that Sky News can come into Gaza with you next week?
Sure, you're invited.
OK, we will be there. Just name the time and the place. I want to talk about something... Well, actually, I just want to check, and that will be on an embed. We won't be given unfettered access, obviously. That'll be with IDF troops.
I am in charge on embeds. I have brought in dozens of reporters in recent weeks, and we'll continue doing that at least once a week, maybe twice a week. You're invited. And that's my part. I'm in charge of having reporters join IDF troops, and I coordinate that, and we've done that a lot in recent weeks.
Well, let's bring in Nadeem and John, shall we? Nadeem, what did you make of David Lammy's statement in the Commons?
Yeah, look, I think the really important thing is to make sure aid flows. I think that what countries like the UAE have done in Gaza has been vital by delivering, I think, the second biggest aid delivery after the US. I think that has to be the priority today. The second and equally important priority is to get the hostages back and, of course, to dismantle Hamas's capability. I was talking to some senior members of the Israeli government recently. I think where Hamas surprised Israel strategically is one, obviously, the horrific attack on October 7th and the murder and the rape, but also on the level of sophistication of the tunnel network inside Gaza, and to dismantle that is unbelievably challenging. I think the next stage, if we are really serious about wanting a two-state solution with the Palestinian people who have an inalienable right to a state, is to get serious about the day after. And I don't yet think we are at that stage. I don't mean that as a criticism to anybody. I just mean that both the regional neighbouring countries and the rest of the world is not really yet serious about, what happens the day after. Countries like the UAE have put forward serious plans from 2 years ago. It's only now that sort of the rest of the region is beginning to take this seriously. How do you create a government that works for the Gazan people? Clearly, the what was in place in the West Bank is challenged by corruption, terrible mismanagement, all sorts of issues. And I think we really need to get serious about it.
It's important to talk about the day after, but we need to talk about today. And what's happening is aid isn't getting in on the scale that's needed. And what David Lammy said today was accurate. It's a man-made famine. Children are starving to death. Israel denies it, but that's the reality of it from all the independent organisations and sources we hear from. That's the first thing. The second thing, the bombing is going on. The bombing is continuing. Civilians are dying in their hundreds every day as a result of the indiscriminate bombing. And I'm pleased that Sky is going to have some access. You'll be embedded and it will be controlled. But there's been over 250 journalists killed. I'm the Secretary of the National Union of Journalists in Parliament. We've had 250 journalists killed, targeted by Israel as a result of that. I just think at the moment there's an emergency that's going on. I think the international community have failed the Palestinians. Of course, we want to recognise a Palestinian state, but even that, the terms that are agreed by our own government has almost given the permission to Israel to block that if necessary. We need immediate international action to get aid on the scale there and also to ensure that the bombing is halted. I don't think we've done enough.
I'm interested, I mean, there's so many things to talk about on this, obviously, but I am also interested in the Jeremy Corbyn party and whether or not you think the situation in Gaza is going to really move the dial on that.
I think what's happened on the issue of Gaza is that it's made a large number of people extremely more than concerned, very angry about the whole situation. And that frustration has come out as a result of the government inaction as well. And although David Lammy said today, we've stopped arms supplies, we haven't. We're still sending the parts for the F-35 doing the bombing.
Do you back the party?
No. I'm a Labour Party member and I'll remain within the Labour Party. And I haven't got the Labour whip at the moment because I voted to scrap the 2-child limit. I'm hoping I get the Labour whip back. But to be honest, the issue of Gaza is above party. It's above it. What we have to ensure that we're working on a cross-party basis to secure peace, the release of the hostages, but the end of the killing.
I think you're probably wise to stick with Labour. I think Corbyn's party's going to have a real problem because it is the marriage of sort of the progressive woke
you wait and see.
who the ultra hard left who think that.
I'm getting the sense.
Give me one second.
I've been told I've got to get to break, guys. I know that
87 genders.
I can't have. I'm
the Islamists.
I'm going to have to
the
say
Gaza MPs.
I cannot have you two take on another
They've got a guy called Adnan Hussein. There's only 2 genders. So they will divide on woke versus Islamists.
You've got enough problems with reform on your side.
Still to come on the Politics Hub, with the Prime Minister revealing that he has a St George's Cross in his number 10 flat. We'll be discussing whether flying the flag is still such a divisive issue on the left.
Coming up on the UK Tonight from 8, we have a special report from Nuneaton, where tensions over the housing of asylum seekers are leading to angry scenes on the streets. Also ahead, I speak to the daughter of Bim Coley, the 80-year-old who was fatally injured in an attack by 2 teenagers 1 year ago tonight. His family believe he may not have died if the police had been tougher on antisocial behaviour. All that and much more on the UK Tonight at 8.
Sky News has been given exclusive data showing every Palestinian who has been killed in Gaza since the war began. Our analysis of this pattern in the killing suggests that entire families were wiped out in their homes or shelters. The data and forensics team is a multi-skilled unit dedicated to providing transparent journalism from Sky News. We located footage of the airdrop to a tent camp in central Gaza.
These airdrops are falling in extremely populated areas.
We combine traditional reporting with advanced analysis of satellite imagery, social media, and other open source information. And this is just one of the strikes and incidents we've been able to geolocate across Gaza. Sky News has found Nazi speeches and marching music have been used as background sound on tens of thousands of TikTok videos as far-right groups try and spread their message. Sky News has seen 72,000 posts used in this way. There's no evidence yet of foul play at Heathrow. It shows weaknesses that enemies could take advantage of. Elon Musk says it is, quote, a viper's nest of radical left Marxists who hate America. Supporters say it saves lives and projects American power and influence.
I think we would generally be called far right, sure.
It's called Return to the Land, and they invited me in.
A lot of people are going to be, why are you making Nazi references? Right. Well, why wouldn't I?
Its founder says he is building a fortress for the white race.
It's a racial association. I kind of want to ask you, after seeing this, do you think what we're doing is immoral?
We followed a social media trail that led us to Bristol, where a confrontation between protesters erupted into a full-scale riot.
Here it really is pitched battle skirmishes, hurling missiles, throwing punches.
I'm Tom Cheshire, Sky's data and forensics correspondent.
What might happen if Russia attacked the UK?
This is clearly an enormous show of force.
It is definitely out of the ordinary.
We ran a war game with former ministers back in the hot seat.
Ben Wallace.
Amber Rudd.
Jack Straw.
It's the kind of war game that's genuinely tested inside government.
The Russians are signalling that there may be an attack.
Russia knows our weaknesses, but do you? I'm Deborah Haynes. From Sky News and Tortoise, this is The War Game. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello and welcome back to the Politics Hub. Now, there's perhaps nothing more English than engaging in some heated discussions over the St George's Cross, where most of the countries, just fly their flag. Here it's often seen as a kind of political statement. Over the summer, the Red Cross has been appearing in all sorts of places, from roundabouts to zebra crossings. And now Keir Starmer has been asked about his views as well. He said he's got one in his number 10 flat, but he worried about it being used for, in his words, divisive purposes. But is the national flag still a divisive issue for the political left? John, what do you reckon? You fan of the flag?
Well, I'm quite happy at flying flags, but in some instances you can see that some groups are trying to divide us in that way. And what we've got to do is ignore them and say, no, we reclaim our own flag. In my constituency, there's the St George Cross. There's also the Irish tricolour and the Palestinian flag going up. So I don't mind at all. But we've got to reclaim it. We cannot allow the far right to claim our flag. That's the whole point.
His political instincts, Starmer's theirs, are wrong on this. Instead of actually doing what John would have done, probably if he was Prime Minister, and say, look, let's celebrate it.
He's winding us up again, isn't he?
Let's get behind, raise the flag. Starmer, what does he do? He instructs the police to take it down. Why, oh, why? If you're really going to not allow the extremists to hijack this, you're the leader, you're the Prime Minister. Get out there and say, let's be proud of the flag.
He has flown the flag a bit.
No, but he also said that it has to come down.
No, he didn't instruct them.
Yes,
he didn't instruct them, but the police...
He did, John,
you know that. The police in my area have said, look, sometimes we think groups are putting these flags up as bait to want us to take them down, to cause a controversy. And I think the council and the police have got the right idea on that. And most people think, well, the flag's there, that doesn't really matter that much. But in some areas where the far right are trying to use it in that way, what we've got to do is not rise to their bait, but make sure that people know that flag is there because we believe in one country.
Yeah. Because it's a beautiful thing. Celebrate it.
It is a beautiful
You're the
thing.
Prime Minister.
We love a flag.
Get on the front foot and lead this stuff.
Right,
he spent 2 months.
I like the Irish tricolour as well. That's the Irish background.
He's a dangerous man.
Whatever flag you want, get it out there. There's a rare pause between the conversation between you two. So I'm going to jump in and say thank you very much for being on the programme. And thank you very much for watching as well. I will see you tomorrow at 7 p.m. Up next, it's UK Tonight with Sarah J. Mee, and at 9 p.m. you've got The World with Yalda Hakeem. But I'll see you back here on the Politics Hub at 7 p.m. Have a lovely evening.